Speaker number 7, Eloise du Plessis, Joy of the Tangible. Joy of the Tangible, Eloise du Plessis.
Often the hands will solve a mystery that the intellect has struggled with in vain. Carl G. Jung. I work in the financial services industry, and in the summer, I listened to a webinar on the outlook for barley prices around the world. Sounds really boring, right? The auspicious expert explained what harvests look like in different places. There were bumper crops in Germany and Scandinavia, and the same was expected for the UK mid-July, but they were afflicted by torrents of late summer rain. And even though the supply is still good, most of it is feed quality barley now, and no longer malting quality. That is the type we need to make beer. I learned that Canada is responsible for most of the barley used in North America. Here, it only takes 100 days from planting to harvest, and 90% of it is malting quality. I learned so much. It was a wonderful call to be a part of. And I thought, why? Why did I find this so interesting? And I realized this was the only part of my day where I was dealing with something tangible. I had a connection to the earth, to people sowing and reaping something real. I could picture the fields of barley stretching acres upon acres, and huge harvesters barreling through, cutting and storing the grain. See Russell Crowe in Gladiator, walking through the fields, swishing his hand through the grain, touching, feeling his home. Contest chair, fellow Toastmasters, judges, and all our guests, this stood in stark contrast to the rest of my day. A day filled with things that are intangible and esoteric. There are so many aspects of this industry where I make my livelihood that bear little relation to the picture of stretching barley fields that I just painted. Let's start with economic forecasts, or as I like to call it, crystal ball gazing in a suit and tie. Trying to divine a future number that is so loaded with assumptions and accounting gymnastics that it actually has nothing to do with products being bought and sold. More examples: algorithmic trading, goodwill, intangible assets. All of these things are like ghosts, mirages, specters. They're promising you an oasis in the desert, but definitely not delivering. Now I see that grin of satisfaction on your face for the peril that us poor corporate cronies find ourselves in. But you, dear listener, have been dragged into this intangible world with me. The pandemic has turned even the most basic, tangible things into a series of zeros and ones beamed over miles. Virtual everything, real nothing. Virtual speech contests, virtual yoga classes, drive-by birthday parties, Zoom happy hour. So, what happened when we were all plunged into this not quite the real thing world? We yearned for the tangible. And I expect that that is the reason why so many people have turned to hobbies that include something you can touch. Sourdough bread baking, for example. You're not going to make a great loaf by sitting and watching the Food Channel or hunkering down with a food book. You have to get your hands in the dough. Gardening. Taking a seed from this red pepper that was in your salad and planting it, and nurturing it until it grows into a plant that yields multiples of this one seed. Seeing something emerge under your own hand gives such a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. And you can see this in the people whose jobs haven't been turned completely virtual. I was driving to the supermarket the other day, and on a stretch of road where there's construction taking place, a man was sitting in an excavator. The huge hydraulic boom came up and went down and scooped the entire bucket full of earth. And as he was sitting there, waiting for the crew to direct his haul, you know what? He was singing in the cabin. He was bopping along to music. He was looking like he's having a grand old time. Did you see those guys? The crew of the tugboat that freed that huge ship from the Suez Canal? The elation and euphoria on their faces. I expect that you only get that feeling when you affect the world in such a visceral way, moving mountains and holding it in your control. So, contest chair, my fellow Toastmasters, all our guests, when this pandemic and the world in general begins to feel like you're living in a simulation, let your hands solve that mystery for you. Replace even one of the books you were going to read on your device with a hardcover from the library. Grow and nurture a houseplant. I promise you, it is a lot more gratifying than building an entire ranch on your computer on that game that Facebook keeps poking you about. You can even brew some craft beer with our excellent Canadian malting quality barley. Cheers to the joy of the tangible. Contest chair.